Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Qimpro's seventh webinar. My name is Umesh Dhan, and I'm pleased to welcome each one of you all for this 30-minute session on cost of poor quality with our own Mr. Suresh Lulla. A brief background on Mr. Lulla. Mr. Lulla has pioneered the quality movement in India. He set up Qimpro Consultants way back in 1987 as one of the 12 worldwide representatives of the Juran Institute. He was mentored by the founder of Juran Institute, Dr. J.M. Juran, who's the father of quality. Qimpro has served several reputed business organizations, MNCs, SMEs, hospitals in India and abroad. Their signature claim is that their clients have saved in excess of 25,000 crore rupees as a byproduct of quality improvement, especially by strategically addressing their cost of poor quality. Mr. Lulla has more than 50 years of experience as a management consultant, speaker, trainer, coach, author of several books, as well as a wonderful storyteller. Before we begin, I'd like to inform you that the recording of this webinar will be shared on the site qimpro.com as well as the Qimpro LinkedIn page. So do link up with us. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and we really look forward to your questions and your feedback. So over to Mr. Lulla.
Thank you, Umesh, for your warm introduction. It's always a pleasure to have you as an anchor. Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the 7th Qimpro webinar. The subject today is cost of poor quality, COPQ as we refer to it. We experience COPQ in every industry: manufacturing, services, healthcare, education, and even governmental services. COPQ, according to me, is very democratic. It is shared by all. Now let me explain what COPQ is. I'd like to start by talking about the iceberg. You know, in today's times with climate change, etc., we see icebergs floating in various oceans. It's a spectacular creation. Essentially, it is a mass of ice that has broken away from a glacier. What we see is typically only the tip of the iceberg. Only 20% of the iceberg is actually visible. The remaining 80% is hidden below the surface of the ocean. This 80% has the potential to sink the Titanic. Similarly, we see the tip of the iceberg of cost of poor quality. We see costs such as rework, inspection, rejects, waste, customer returns, testing. What we don't see is hidden in the iceberg. 15 to 25% of total costs are below the surface. These costs are excessive overtime, customer allowances, unused capacity, and so on. We budget for all this. So what is cost of poor quality? Cost of poor quality is the chronic waste in your organization. chronic waste does not come with an alarm. Let me explain with the aid of the Duran trilogy: quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. On the x-axis, I have time. On the y-axis, I have quality. What goes up is bad quality or cost of poor quality. Quality planning commences before operations commence. It starts with, who is my customer? What are my customer needs? What features will satisfy those needs? I benchmark those features to be best in class. For these best-in-class features, I look for practices or activities that will deliver the best-in-class features. I benchmark the practices, practice by practice. I come up with an ideal process that will deliver the features that satisfy customer needs. Here is where the problem arises, because as a qualitist, one would look for zero defects. But in a business, you also have the finance angle. The head of the finance comes to ask me a question: zero defect at what cost? And so we enter into a bargaining. We optimize this and agree to a certain standard of working of bad quality. Quality planning results in how much bad quality you are willing to live with. Operations commence, and we use quality control to perform within the bands of a standard. Till something go out of control, like a fire, and the firefighting department of the organization, which is commonly called quality control, puts the fire out and restores performance back to the standard. QED, quite easily done. Below the standard, we have chronic waste. This chronic waste gets budgeted for. Quality improvement seeks to reduce the chronic waste project by project and deliver gains that go straight to the bottom line of an organization. The lessons learned from quality improvement are then fed back to quality planning. Quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. The focus is on quality improvement that delivers as a byproduct cost of poor quality reduction. What are the COPQ categories? Here are some examples. Prevention costs. Prevention costs such as quality education, process design, preventive maintenance. Appraisal costs, testing, measurement, problem analysis, maintenance of test equipment. We need to invest in prevention costs, and we need to contain some of our appraisal costs. For example, maintenance of test equipment or calibration of equipment is vital to measurement. We also have internal failure costs. How often have you seen re-inspection and retesting? Have you seen the physical evidence of scrap, rework, repairs, servicing, defect removal, lost production? And we have external failure costs. These costs come from returned products, liabilities, malfunctioning, poor safety, and warranty. Let's put all this together. A typical organization would spend 5% of its cost of quality on prevention. It would spend another 25% on appraisal. The balance 70% would be on internal or external failures. This is the cost of quality or the cost of poor quality. What we need to do is invest a lot more in prevention, quality by design. We need to contain the appraisal cost, which would automatically go down if you do prevention. And we need to knock the failure costs down to 20% of total costs. Here we have a graphic that explains how 50% of your cost of poor quality can go straight to the bottom line. Now you may be wondering, what is the total or typical cost of poor quality in an organization? It ranges from 25% to 40% of your total cost. What is your profit? Probably 10 to 15%. Our proposition would be halve your cost of poor quality, double your profit without capital investment. This realization came to Dr. J.J. Irani in 1989, and he led from the front and was one of the biggest evangelists for quality improvement to reduce wasteful costs. The efficiency of processes improved, the bottom line improved, and the company was flushed with money. It was the darling of the share market up to the year 2000. Another testimonial comes from Mr. Chandra Mohan, the former vice chairman of Punjab Tractors. He had a backyard of scrap and rejected materials. Using the improvement methodology, the backyard became a playground. I'd like to share an example of a multinational bank in Bombay, and it's part of my quality fables. This multinational bank had been recently renovated, and it recruited the best students from the best campuses. It had marble flooring, piped music, Hussein paintings, The branch manager invited me to his bank, which was like a benchmark within the group. We walked from department to department. And these departments were like an open office with partitions. We came to one particular department where I asked him a question. What is the cost of work? What does this department do? And he said they produce the monthly statements to account holders. So click, click, my mind went, and I said, oh, they manufacture monthly statements. He was a little confused. The next question I asked him is, what's the failure rate? And he said, nothing, because it's all computerized. Can't you see? Each of the 4 people in this department are busy on their computers. I had to ask him the question in another way. Do any customers come back for a reconciliation? To which his response was, oh, maybe 1 in 200. I got my answer, 0.5% failure. My next question to him is, what does this cost you? He said, nothing, it's all computerized. Nevertheless, the 2 of us spent half a day talking to the 4 occupants of that department. What we learned is that it takes 2 persons to do 99.5% work right the first time. And it takes the equivalent of 2 to correct 0.5% failures. 50% of the budget was cost of poor quality. Now, this was an eye-opener, and the bank quickly employed the methodology for its loans, car loan services in Chennai. I'd like to talk about another example, the tubes division at Tata Steel. We go back to 1989. Absenteeism was rampant, not rampant really, 1% at Tata Steel. And the tubes division was one of the smallest divisions of the campus in Jamshedpur. Because of unplanned 1% absenteeism, the tube lengths varied. And the variability demanded that you trim the tubes, you had physical scrap, and you had a badli who was replacing the regular employee. The cost of the badli and the scrap was 15 lakhs per month. On an annualized basis, that was a big number in 1989. So we formed a team of senior people headed by the head of the division, Firdaus Vandrewala. And together we went through a diagnosis of the problem. Now, diagnosis requires that we do an autopsy, which means see with your own eyes. So we went to an absent employee. The absent employee, 3 in the afternoon, we rang the doorbell and the door opened with a picture of health of a Sardar in his lungi and his vest, Ganji. He was rosy. So one asked him, "Why are you absent?" He said, "My son is not well." "What's wrong with your son?" "Oh, nothing much. Sardi Zukam. He's got cough and cold." "Cough and cold, and you're not at work?" "So this is what happens. I took my child to the local Tata hospital. I spent 3 hours with the paperwork. The doctor saw me, saw my child, and prescribed medication. I once again stood in line for the medication. That took me through the day, and you had marked me absent. What were the remedial actions? Correcting the admissions process at Tata Hospital. The multiplier impact of that was on the whole campus. And we saved in excess of 20 crores per annum, recurring, traceable to unplanned absenteeism. Let's take a third example. Caterpillar in South India at Tiruvellur. It manufactures earth-moving equipment. The workers' canteen and the executives' canteen were on the same ground. The executives' canteen was above the workers' canteen. Executives who were inviting foreign visitors to the executive canteen had to walk past a whole lot of garbage that was under the staircase adjacent to the workers' canteen. This was very embarrassing to the qualitist leader of the Tiruvellur campus. He took it on as a project, formed a team of senior people, and they did what they need to do first. See with their own eyes. They took the garbage and made 2 bins, one for avoidable and the other for unavoidable waste. Avoidable was cooked food and unavoidable was peels, packaging, etc. The cost of an additional dump truck every day for the excess garbage was 12,000 rupees per day. This was a 3-shift plant. 12,000 per day multiplied by 365 is a very, very big number. The quality improvement project focused on avoidable waste, which was most or 2/3 of the total waste. The benefits, so a team was formed and they met workers. And this is what they heard. We have a half-hour break. In that half hour, we have to put as much food as we can and gobble it up and return back to work. 2, the ladles are too large. The thalis are too big. You serve us North Indian food in South India. Now that came as a deadly blow. The remedial action involving their wives to do South Indian cooking. The cost of the additional dump truck was saved. What the company did was replow this money into worker welfare. Today, that canteen is like a clubhouse. A clubhouse with carom, table tennis, white walls, and the walls adorned by paintings of their children. In fact, the company even printed a calendar with the children's paintings. So what are the lessons learned? Chronic problems should not be legitimized in the budget. When estimating cost of poor quality, do not do hair-splitting accounting. Work with non-controversial, non-debatable numbers. See the problem with your own eyes. We tend to pass chronic problems as part of our culture. Oh, we are dirty. Oh, we've always been throwing this waste. COPQ is also alive in every service process. Support services, recruitment, maintenance, purchasing. A low failure rate can disguise a high COPQ. Summary. Consider COPQ as an opportunity. Use a structured problem-solving methodology. Elephant-sized problems can be eaten bite by bite. In the words of Dr. J.M. Joran, for many phenomena, 80% of consequences stem from 20% of the causes.
Thank you, Mr. Lulla. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this webinar so far. We are yet to get into the interesting part, which are your questions and Mr. Lulla's answers to them. Mr. Lulla, while I was listening to you, I was particularly fascinated by those 3 case studies. And yes, the savings looked a bit too small at the first glance, and then I realized, well, these could be cases that were done way earlier, and hence the savings could be looking smaller than what it would look in today's world, where plant sizes have increased and the number of workers and people have increased. So thanks a lot for sharing that. I can see questions have started coming up, and before I go to the questions, can I request all of you all to respond to the poll? I hope you've answered to the poll, and you can answer your questions at the Q&A tab down here on your screen. Yeah, the full length of self-assessment, if you go through, includes detailed issue level questions, and which makes the entire exercise really very relevant. I also want to let you know that we'd like to share that Qimpro runs a service which is called Intelligent Cost Reduction. And it was through this service that the clients in the 3 examples that you saw, that Mr. Lulla quoted, they could increase their bottom line. Yeah. So I now let me check on the questions. Okay. So the question that is coming from Kalyan is, what is the difference between COQ and COPQ?
Oh, and it's always created a lot of confusion. Cost of quality is prevention and appraisal costs. And when you put it together with failures, it's cost of poor quality.
Okay. And Carlos Lopez has asked a question from the dynamic industry of retail. And he says, in retail, what would be the biggest contributors of COPQ?
In retail?
Yes.
Oh, so are we visualizing one of the big departmental stores or food marts, or what are we looking at?
I guess we can take, irrespective of category, any brick and mortar retail, because Carlos is silent on that. He's not mentioned. So we make an assumption that he's talking about traditional retail, the cost of poor quality.
One would be inventory. You know, you need just-in-time inventory. That would be a major one. We have, you know, a case of the missing trolleys. The missing trolleys that carry your purchases. That's one. You may have it in electricity. You have a lot of electricity running through long hours in a retail store. You may have untrained people on the job.
Or even vendor performance. So Carlos later on clarified, saying that he's talking about retailers like Zara, Costco, Walmart, and so on. So yes, he's talking about brick and mortar stores.
Could you repeat that?
He has clarified that we're talking about retail stores like Zara, Walmart, and Costco, which are basically brick and mortar stores primarily, although they also have online stores.
I guess in all of them, it's inventory that is the main issue. If we can find a way of just-in-time availability, logistics costs, etc., you're going to be able to address your cost of poor quality. Think about your main pain points. Training can be one. You have untrained people there. I come back to energy. You know, you may be consuming more energy than you need to.
May I add in this, out of my experience in retail, what we the opportunities where we used to look for searching for cost of reducing cost of poor quality, or opportunities of reducing chronic waste, identifying places where we used to conduct this conduct and track 3 indexes, which we called the vendor satisfaction index, the employee satisfaction index, and the customer satisfaction index. And over years we could realize that there was a lot of chronic waste that came to light by tracking these 3 numbers, and which helped us constantly, ongoingly knowing where to make the investments at the vendor front, at the logistics front, at the customer end front. So this is what I could supplement.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, because vendor quality, which finally finds a place on the shelf,
yeah,
is the hatchery for cost of poor quality, not only in retail, but in many other industries.
Okay. So Devraj has asked a question. How do we measure the COPQ related to lack of fundamental skill? I know it's a broad-based question because we don't have a context to what Devraj is mentioning. I'll repeat it again. How do we measure the COPQ related to lack of skill? I guess he's talking about fundamental skills in employees in the workforce.
Well, I'll latch on to the tubes division of Tata's, where the Badli was not as trained as the original worker. Because the Badli was not trained, there was more variability in the tube lengths, which led to trimming, loss of productivity. And if you look at non-controversial numbers, even the cost of the Badli and the scrap, it's a big number. So to carry that thought process further, I would say giving a HR head KRA in terms of number of man days training per employee. What does the HR head do? Creates an annual calendar of training programs that would be conducted. And we are now on a Friday, and the course has to be conducted on Monday. The requirement is that at least 10 employees be in the class. And I have 3 employees who have registered. Now, what do? If I have to meet my KRA, I must have a full class. So what I do is I phone my friends in the company and say, "Yaar, please send me someone for this batch." Who do I send? I send the person sitting idle in the department, who's dispensable. Whom am I training? I'm training the wrong person. Another area in training that is wasteful is education without action is easily forgotten. Education with action is remembered. So when you have a strategic plan, a vision, and you're deploying it, you have projects that have to be addressed. Who should work on the projects? The people most impacted by the problem. Do they have the right skills? Perhaps not. Impart the skill to them in time for action to solve the problem. They'll remember that.
Okay. Okay. There are several questions that are there, and I doubt we'll have the time to answer all of them live right now, but I assure all of you that you all will receive a response online or through mail. Mr. Lulla will ensure that he replies to them. I'll take a couple of more questions. This question is, the question really is an anonymous question which says, can we add COPQ as an individual objective and review it during a person's annual appraisal? If yes, in what form and how do we measure it?
That may be a little difficult.
I guess so.
Because chronic problems happen when processes cross the functions. You know, you have cross-functional processes. And where the process crosses from one function to the next, it may not be owned by anybody. So that environment of blame and the chronic problems, the cancer cells in the process start developing. So it's usually an organizational issue where cross-functional teams have to resolve the problem. So putting it on an individual would, I think, would be very demanding.
So Prashant Shivsagar has asked a question saying that should we consider training as a part of COPQ? I guess he means way of addressing COPQ, which is and within training, which is the most effective technique that we can use to reduce COPQ. What kind of training programs, I guess, is what Prashant is asking. What's the most effective training technique to build awareness and reduce COPQ?
I think I've implied a few things now. I'll put it again together. Under prevention costs, education is there. This education should be supported with action. If you don't do that, you know, 2 weeks down the line, the person will have started forgetting what he's been taught. And in a month's time, he'll have to go back to the notes. 6 months down the line, he won't even understand his notes. So you do need education. You do need training. You need coaching. You need counseling. You need facilitation. It's all very specific. You can't have training in general terms. That would be my take on it. So get your training needs out of your strategic plan. What are the needs needed? 2, if it has to be company-wide, follow the Xerox model, where they educate only the CEOs. And it's for the CEO then to cascade it to the next line, and the next line to the third line, where the CEO will audit the performance. Now, unless you are pushed into being a teacher, it's unlikely that you will learn. At Xerox, they make the CEOs the teachers. They don't have a separate department. Got it?
Interesting.
So you've got to think innovatively.
Get that. Mr. Lulla, there are several questions from various industries, right from IT to construction to hospital to retail again. I don't think we'll be able to take that, but let me take it from one of the industries where I remember having a lot of conversations with you, which is with respect to healthcare. And the question again is from an anonymous attendee. It says, what could be the external failure costs for a hospital?
Death of a patient. External failures could be the ambulatory services not being properly equipped.
Mm-hmm.
A patient comes back for re-surgery because the first time, right, it wasn't successful. That's a rework. So I can think of these top of my mind. It's the ambulance coming back or customer complaints, basically.
Okay. Can I take one last question? How much of time do I have with you? Can I take one last question?
Yes, one final question.
Okay. This again has come in from healthcare, which says, what's the best? And I think this is a question which is very much relevant to all industries, and hence I'm picking this up, which says, what's the best way to tackle behavioral issues at workplace which impact the healthcare quality, for example, hand hygiene? And so what's the best way to tackle behavioral issues at workplace?
Could you repeat? I'm sorry, I haven't followed.
The question is, with reference to COPQ, what's the best way to tackle behavioral issues amongst employees at workplace, especially in healthcare? The question is in the context of healthcare, how do we tackle behavioral issues?
Uh,
So there are system issues, there are process issues, and there are behavioral issues which impact, which lead to poor quality. Okay, one of the big contributors could be behavioral, especially in a service industry. And so, how do we tackle behavioral issues?
yeah, the underlying assumption is that people make quality. Would I be correct in that? Now, how do you create a culture for quality? That will be the behavioral part. The first thing you should address is housekeeping. Get everyone into housekeeping where they can detect anything that goes wrong. You're creating a climate for it, for detecting errors. 2, address safety issues. Because when something fails, obviously the quality of that had failed. Creating that culture will not happen by telling them start on quality. Everyone's very proud of the quality of the work they do. You have to create that climate, and that climate will come from housekeeping and safety. And probably a couple of years later, you have an organization that's ready to take on quality.
Okay. Ms. Lulla, and ladies and gentlemen, we're running really short of time. We've exceeded our time already. Thank you so much for your questions. There've been way too many questions than we could have answered. And I know many of your questions have not been answered, and I've intentionally not been able to ask repeat questions from people. But we've noted your questions, and we shall definitely be getting back to you. Ms. Lulla, during the webinar, what I realized in everyday work quite easily gets done. Okay, but chronic waste is always there. Okay, and the line that I'm really taking from you is half your COPQ, which leads to double the profit, and with zero additional incremental investments into the business. So that's really it's a provocative statement as well as an inspiring one, and that's the big one that I'm taking. I'm sure each one in the webinar has taken one learning for themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned, we'll get back to you answering each and every question which has come back by Mr. Lulla. To let you know, our next webinar is on turbocharging for performance excellence. This will be in 2 parts. Part 1 is going to be next month, March, and part 2 is in April. Dates, we'll be announcing it shortly. Also, to let you know that you can link up with us for WhatsApp updates. You have the details on the screen. The WhatsApp numbers, please add it to your contact numbers. You could also get in touch on LinkedIn, and that way you'll be able to get an update on our webinars, on our events, digital courses, self-assessment tools, and of course Mr. Lulla's blogs and articles. And he, as mentioned, he's a prolific writer and author. In addition to all the books, yes, he does get time to blog and write articles. So do get in touch with us through WhatsApp as well as LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and we really look forward to seeing you next month once again for the Qimpro webinar. Thank you very much.
Umesh, may I just add one thing?
Please do.
Since there were questions from healthcare,
Okay.
if any of you want a more elaborate response to COPQ in healthcare, please drop us a line.
Sure. By the way, there were questions right from construction, from service centers, from healthcare, from IT, from retail, and many other which I've not been able to read through. So I guess we'll take it offline. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and audience, thank you so much for your energetic questioning, and I hope we can respond to each of you all with questions, with answers to your questions. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Umesh, and thank you, participants.